Everything that happens is as usual and familiar as the rose in spring and the fruit in summer. Marcus Aurelius. Have you ever found yourself at a social gathering? A party, perhaps, surrounded by laughter and conversation? You're playing your part perfectly. You're smiling, nodding, telling a witty story or two. On the surface, you are the picture of engagement, of belonging. But deep inside, behind your own eyes, a different feeling stirs. A profound sense of unreality, of being a spectator in your own life. It feels as if the real you is somewhere far away, watching this stranger who wears your face and speaks with your voice. This disconcerting gap between who we are and who we pretend to be is not just a fleeting moment of social anxiety. It's a fundamental aspect of the human condition, a truth so pervasive we often fail to see it. We are actors on a stage, playing our roles so convincingly we believe the costume is our skin. The brilliant Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung dedicated his life to exploring this inner world, and he gave a name to this public-facing mask we all wear: the persona. The term is borrowed directly from the Latin word for the masks worn by actors in ancient Greek and Roman theater. These masks weren't meant to hide the actor, but to project a specific character to the audience: the tragic king, the clever servant, the grieving mother. In the same way, our psychological persona is the face we present to the world. It is our social identity, a carefully constructed compromise between our authentic, chaotic inner self and the endless expectations of society. It's the polished professionalism of the doctor, the patient authority of the teacher, the unwavering confidence of the leader, the dutiful affection of the son or daughter. It is a necessary and functional tool. Jung described it as a segment of the collective psyche, a tool for navigating the intricate dance of human interaction. It allows us to function in a complex world without having to negotiate our entire, unfiltered being in every single encounter. In this sense, the persona isn't inherently bad. It is, in fact, an essential tool for adaptation and survival in civilization. Without it, we would be too vulnerable, too exposed to the judgments and pressures of social life. But a profound, insidious danger arises when we forget that we are wearing this mask. The danger emerges when the actor becomes so utterly lost in his role that he forgets who he is when the curtain falls. This is the great persona illusion, the tragic and mistaken belief that we are the role we play, that the mask is our true face. We become, as Jung observed with piercing clarity, identical with our own personas. The professor becomes indistinguishable from his textbook. The tenor becomes nothing more than his voice. The politician becomes the sum of his sound bites. This gradual identification is a form of psychological self-imprisonment. We build a gilded cage of social acceptability around ourselves, polishing its bars with every promotion, every compliment, every social media like, all the while remaining blissfully unaware that we have sacrificed our freedom for a sense of security. The cage is comfortable, predictable, and admired by others, but it is a cage nonetheless, cutting us off from the wild, untamed wilderness of our own souls. When we allow this over-identification with the persona to take root, we inadvertently sever the vital connection to the deeper, instinctual, and more authentic parts of our being. We begin to lead what Jung called an artificial life, a meticulously curated performance. This performance deviates further and further from the primal, instinctual roots of our true nature. This creates a profound and painful split, a dissociation within the psyche. We become tragically one-sided. Our conscious mind, our ego, becomes puffed up with pride in its rationality, its control, and its social success. It begins to look down upon the vast, chaotic, and unimaginably powerful world of the unconscious, dismissing its whispers as primitive, irrational, or irrelevant. In doing so, we essentially abandon the largest and most foundational part of ourselves, leaving it to stagnate and turn toxic in the darkness of neglect. We become a tree with beautiful leaves and branches, but withering roots that no longer draw sustenance from the deep earth. This condition is the unspoken spiritual plague of the modern world. We are constantly, relentlessly encouraged from all sides to become compliant social units. We are pushed to be interchangeable parts in a vast economic or political machine, to conform to the blandness of statistical averages. So-called objective science, in its quest for universal laws, often devalues the individual's subjective experience as mere anecdote or noise, while society, in its quest for stability, demands conformity and punishes radical divergence. In this suffocating environment, our true individuality, our sacred uniqueness, becomes a liability. It becomes an inconvenient variable to be managed, medicated, or suppressed. The inevitable result is a creeping, pervasive sense of meaninglessness, a quiet desperation that gnaws at the very marrow of the soul. We chase fulfillment in public welfare, in higher standards of living, in technological distractions. But the inner man, the undiscovered self, is left to starve in the midst of plenty. This is the ultimate price of the persona illusion. So, the critical question becomes, what happens to all the parts of ourselves that we deem inconvenient or unacceptable? Where do the messy emotions, the socially taboo thoughts, the primitive instincts, the secret shames, and the unlived potentials actually go? They don't simply vanish into thin air when we deny them. They are merely banished from the tidy, well-lit parlor of our conscious ego. They gather in the basement of the psyche. There, in the dark, they coalesce to form a powerful, autonomous subpersonality that Jung termed the shadow. The shadow is the other side, the dark brother or sister who walks silently behind our conscious ego. It personifies everything that we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. It is the repository for our repressed egotism, our hidden laziness, our secret lusts, our irrational anger, our envy, and our greed. Crucially, the shadow contains all the things we are quick to condemn and criticize when we see them in other people. To voluntarily turn and face this shadow is the first great test of courage on any authentic inner journey. It is the initiation rite into true self-knowledge. It requires us to look unflinchingly into the mirror of our soul and not recoil in horror or denial at what we see. We must confront the deeply uncomfortable truth that the darkness we so readily project onto our enemies, our rivals, and the other side of any conflict often has its deepest roots within our own unexamined hearts. The evil we see out there is frequently a reflection of a potential we have refused to face in here. Jung describes this essential encounter as a passage through a narrow door, a painful, ego-crushing constriction. No one who truly seeks psychological wholeness can be spared this passage. It is a profoundly humbling and often terrifying experience, for it shatters the comforting, narcissistic illusion of our own moral superiority and innocence. It is the moment we realize we are capable of the very things we despise in others. Yet, and this is one of Jung's most crucial insights, the shadow, for all its darkness and menace, is not purely evil. It is a living, breathing part of our personality, and as such, it possesses a tremendous amount of raw, untamed energy. Buried within its darkness are not just our vices, but also our valuable, underdeveloped positive qualities. It contains our repressed creativity, our healthy aggression needed to set boundaries, our grounded instincts, our capacity for spontaneous joy, all the parts of ourselves that we may have sacrificed in our quest to be good or acceptable. By consciously withdrawing our projections from others and summoning the courage to own our own darkness, we can begin the painstaking work of integrating the shadow. This act of integration is not about vanquishing the shadow, but about bringing its raw energy into the service of conscious life, transforming its potentially destructive force into a powerful, constructive, and creative one. It's about befriending the dragon, not slaying it. Once we have begun this arduous but rewarding work, we often encounter a deeper, more subtle, and even more mysterious figure rising from the unconscious. This figure is archetypal and contrasexual. For a man, this figure is typically female. For a woman, male. Jung named this archetype the Anima, the woman within a man, and the Animus, the man within a woman. To keep our focus, let's explore the Anima. The Anima personifies all the feminine psychological tendencies in a man's psyche. His moods and intuitions, his capacity for personal love, his feeling for nature, his receptivity to the spiritual, and most importantly, his relationship to the vast, mysterious ocean of the unconscious itself. She is the gatekeeper to the soul, the inner guide who can lead him to the deepest parts of himself. Her influence is profound. The Anima, as the embodiment of the soul, is a figure of immense power and profound ambiguity. She is a dual-natured being. In her negative aspect, she can manifest as a femme fatale, a siren who lures a man into emotional chaos, destructive fantasies, and ruinous obsessions. She is the poisoned damsel of ancient myth, whose beautiful embrace is death. This is her destructive, seductive side. This negative manifestation of the Anima comes to the fore when a man's feeling life has remained infantile and unexpressed, when he represses his own emotions and allows them to turn toxic in the darkness of his unconscious. He becomes a victim of irrational moods, petty touchiness, sentimental attachments, and a general inability to form authentic relationships, forever projecting the image of a goddess or a demon onto the real women in his life. But the Anima also possesses a supremely positive and sacred aspect. When a man learns to engage with her consciously, she becomes his angel of light, his invaluable guide to the inner world, a mediator between his limited ego and the infinite mystery of the self. It is she who connects his conscious mind with the creative, generative, and healing powers of his own unconscious. She inspires him and gives him meaning. She inspires his art, whispers prophetic hunches to him, and allows him to find a profound and unshakable meaning in his life that transcends mere worldly success. This is the Anima that the poet Dante saw in his Beatrice, guiding him from the depths of hell to the heights of paradise. She is the figure of Sophia, or Holy Wisdom, who was revered by the ancient Gnostics as the co-creator and guide of humanity. To consciously engage with the Anima, to take her seriously as a real psychic force, is what Jung called the masterpiece of a man's inner development, following the apprentice piece of confronting the shadow. This doesn't mean literally looking for a soulmate in the outer world. It means paying careful, respectful attention to one's own inner life, to one's feelings, moods, fantasies, and dreams, and not dismissing them as irrational foolishness. It means giving them form by writing them down in a journal, by painting, by sculpting, by entering into an active, imaginative dialogue with these inner figures. By undertaking this practice, a man builds a sturdy bridge to his own soul and begins to understand and be guided by the powerful psychic forces that truly move him from within. He learns to listen to the whispers of his own depths. As our exploration deepens, we move beyond the persona, beyond the shadow, and beyond the Anima, to discover the ultimate regulating center of the entire psyche, the self. The self is the supreme archetype, the archetype of wholeness, the totality of the conscious and unconscious mind combined. It is the destination and the purpose of the great inner journey. It is the unified field of the entire personality. The self is the great man described by the Naskapi Indians of Labrador, the inner companion who dwells in the heart and is immortal. It is the goal of that lifelong process Jung named individuation, the process by which a person becomes a complete, indivisible psychological individual, a whole and separate unity. This arduous process is not about becoming perfect or flawless, but about becoming radically and unapologetically whole. The symbols that herald the emergence of the self are universal, appearing in the myths, religions, and dreams of all cultures throughout history. The most common and powerful of these is the mandala, the Sanskrit word for magic circle, which often contains a quaternity, a symmetrical division into 4 parts. We see this symbol everywhere, in the breathtaking rose windows of Gothic cathedrals, in the healing sand paintings of the Navajo. This fourfold structure represents the 4 fundamental functions of consciousness: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition, finally brought into a state of dynamic harmony and balance around a unifying center. The self is the supreme organizing principle that spontaneously brings order to the chaos of the psyche, just as a crystal lattice forms in a supersaturated solution. It is the emergence of an innate centering pattern from within. The arrival of the self in one's conscious experience is often symbolized in dreams and myths by the motif of something incredibly precious being found in an unexpected and humble place. It is the philosopher's stone of the alchemists, capable of turning lead into gold. It is the treasure hard to attain, guarded by a dragon. It is the divine child, born in a lowly manger, who is destined to become a king. Each of these symbols represents the birth of a new, more complete personality, a consciousness that is no longer identified solely with the fragile, striving ego, but is now centered in a deeper, more enduring, and unshakable reality. In this new arrangement, the ego is not destroyed. Rather, it finds its rightful place as the humble servant, the trusted viceroy, and the effective vehicle for the wisdom of the self in the outer world.